Thank you everyone for coming in tonight, and welcome to Urban Lux Cafe. My name is Nabil Almadani, and my father and I started Urban Lux Cafe about 7 months ago with a vision and a mission to provide excellent food, drinks, and service, but most importantly, to become involved with the community and to do everything we possibly can to help the community. Tonight shows that we're taking our first step in the right direction, and I'm extremely proud and just excited about that. So I hope everyone has a great evening and a productive discussion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Nabil. My name is Miranda Redinger, and I'm excited to be your moderator this evening for tonight's Transit Talk, sponsored by Transportation Choices Coalition and U District Let's Go. U District Let's Go is a collaboration with Transportation Choices Coalition, the Seattle Department of Transportation, and U District Partnership, supported by WashDOT Project using congestion mitigation and air quality funds. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you also to Community Fitness for lending us the chairs. They are on loan, so be gentle. Thank you also to the Seattle Channel for recording this event so we can share it with others and keep the conversation going. As an FYI, these microphones are for the channel, so if you can't hear us, just let us know and we can project louder, but we cannot turn up the speakers. Thank you very much to Urban Lux Cafe for hosting and for the great appetizers. Please note, to minimize noise, the cafe will not be serving drinks during the event, but please feel free to enjoy afterwards. We will be here until 10 p.m. And thank you all for spending your evening here with us. I know that all of you are here for a variety of reasons, but I will start with explaining what I'm doing here. I am a senior planner with the city of Shoreline, and I spent 4 years planning for neighborhoods surrounding 2 future light rail stations at 145th Street and 185th Street that will be opening in 2024. I'm also a resident of Northgate, so I have experience both from the agency side and the neighborhood side. And that perspective, through that role, I'm hoping to help kind of facilitate this conversation, and in some cases act like a translator. We tend to have different languages, neighborhoods and agencies, and so we'll try to get to some effective communication. As a renter in Northgate, I am seeing a lot of changes in my neighborhood that will be coming to Shoreline neighborhoods a few years later. The Northgate station opens in 2021, which is the same time as U District and Roosevelt. So I'm seeing things like large infill or large lots that have been empty in the 9 years that I've lived in my house is filling in with more dense development and housing than the surrounding single-family neighborhood. I'm seeing roadway improvements and sidewalk construction. But I'm also, as a renter, my husband and I are going to be displaced because we rent a home on a 17,000 square foot lot, and the size and location have made that out of the price range of first-time home buyers. So again, there's so much going on and so many different effects for people's lives with this kind of stuff. But as a planner, one of the other things that I know is that given the pressures on housing prices and affordability and the housing crisis that we're currently in, 17,000 square feet close to transit is too big for 2 people. So I understand that. I also understand, there's a lot of benefits for this kind of transit-oriented development and the redevelopment that will happen. It's a great way to leverage this multi-million-dollar regional investment to improve neighborhoods in ways that are really beneficial. But as a long-range planner, I also know that we tend to use language differently than normal people. As a long-range planner, I joke that the occupational hazard is I'm sort of perpetually 20 years in the future. And when we started going out to neighborhood meetings in my city, my director kept saying soon when she meant 2 years. So I had to explain to her that normal people, when they hear soon, they think 2 weeks. And another thing that can often be tricky is that defining what is the cart and what is the horse. a lot of times land use and transportation planning can be almost counterintuitive. And I think one of the best examples that I've come across was with regard to planning for bus service. And we had a lot of people in neighborhoods saying, you can't rezone this neighborhood until we have a commitment from the transit providers for service, which sounds right, sounds like how it should go. But really, for the transit service providers to commit to providing service over the long term, they need to not only understand that they will have the ridership to support that service, but that the city can fix 145th and 185th so that their buses will keep running on time. So we have a couple of objectives tonight as Miriam and I, and thank you, Miriam, by the way. She wasn't in the list of people to thank, but thank you, Miriam Castro, for organizing this. When we were thinking about some objectives of what we would like you to leave here knowing and what we would like you to leave here feeling. And we would like you to know from all of these wonderful people that are here to share information about their organizations, how to participate, how to give meaningful input, how to be involved, how to understand what's coming, when to expect it, how to be able to be involved in the process, and how eventually it will affect your home, your business, your organization. We would like you to leave here feeling more empowered, more informed, hopefully with some more trust in the process and the players, and hopefully to start getting excited about using this investment to improve your neighborhoods, to improve your quality of life, transit service, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, all the good things.
My name is Amy Gore. As Miranda mentioned, I work for Councilmember Rob Johnson, who is also a Sound Transit Board member. He is at the City Hall tonight for the budget hearing, so he's sorry he could not be here. We've got a great panel here to talk about. You can go into the weeds, so I was going to just start with kind of a unified theory of transportation and land use that is sort of driving us right now. And I think everybody in this room knows how quickly Seattle is growing. I was looking up the most recent data I could find and saw 120,000 new people since 2010. To break that down, that's about 40 people per day. And we can see the impacts of that, and particularly on our transportation and mobility. And so being able to move people more efficiently is just a core part of keeping the city functional and livable for us. And that includes transportation investments as well as land use changes. And so we really look at the transportation arena as, one, trying to expand transit. That includes bus service, it includes light rail, it includes other types of active transportation projects. I think our second piece is really trying to get more jobs and more housing near that transit, particularly low-income housing. There's some really great things happening around here about affordable housing near transit stations that you're going to hear more about. I think that the other thing that we're really working on is trying to make transit more affordable for folks. We just passed at City Council the expansion of commuter transit benefits, which allows people to save about $300 a year if they are buying their transit pass pre-tax. We've expanded the Youth Orca program, which allows all young people in Seattle Public Schools to have a free transit pass, because if you can get people riding transit early, they will become transit riders for life, and that's what we want. So I think that there is a lot of really exciting stuff going on that all these folks are going to tell you about, and I hope that everybody is as excited about transit in this neighborhood as I am, because I would really love to take light rail home tonight, and I look forward to the day that I can do that. So.
Where should it go to get to?
Oh, I actually live in Beacon Hill. So as somebody who lives in walking distance to a light rail station, I can tell you it's fantastic. And that's all for me. Oh wait, I was supposed to talk about the period of maximum constraint. I apologize. The period of maximum constraint, which is something transportation planners came up with, thank you, is what we call this period from probably now or 2019-ish to 2021, where there is going to be a lot of constraint on particularly on our downtown streets. We've got the Washington State Convention Center expansion program. We've got the viaduct coming down. We've got buses coming out of the downtown transit tunnel. All sorts of things are going to be happening. And so we have been working with the city and the Seattle Department of Transportation has been working very, very closely with King County Metro, with Sound Transit, to come up with strategies to help us all get through this. And I think there's going to be a lot more coming out of the mayor's office soon about specific strategies, but it includes, trying to improve orca card readers, and it includes dedicated transit lanes. It includes more capital projects, and also, again, single occupancy vehicle reduction programs that's kind of like this one of how do we encourage more people to take transit, to walk downtown in this period so that we can keep everybody moving, keep freight moving, keep the business deliveries that need to happen all moving. So that is what the period of maximum constraints is. It also includes some really important improvements to the Montlake Triangle for people who might take the bus there. If you know, right now you can't take the buses, don't drop off right there at the station. I believe that one of the capital projects is to improve that. So I think there are going to be a lot of great improvements, particularly for transit riders and active transportation, to help us get through that period. And that's all I got. Okay.
I'm Ellen Blair. I'm with Sound Transit, and I have a pretty short update. I wanted to focus on what milestones are coming up later this year. But I did want to, just in case there's one person in the room who doesn't know, we do operate a light rail line now from Inga Lake in the south to University of Washington in the north. And it has 16 stations and runs through downtown Seattle. I work on Northgate Link extension. That's the extension from University of Washington station that will head north, with a new station in the U District and a station right up here in Roosevelt and a new station in Northgate. And as Miranda said earlier, that line is scheduled to, well, I should say that extension of our existing line is scheduled to open in September of 2021. But we do have a facility opening later this year in Northgate. If any of you use the park and ride facilities up there, you will know that starting about 5 years ago, Sound Transit started closing some of the existing park and ride space in order to construct our light rail, and we've been operating temporary lots in the meantime so that there wouldn't be a reduction in transit parking. And we're going to open a new park and ride garage later this year, so we'll be closing those temporary lots, and all of the replacement will be going to live in the new garage. Our contractor is busily putting the finishing touches on the garage, so I don't have an opening date yet to announce, but we think in the next couple of weeks we'll be able to say what the actual opening date is, and we'll publicize that. One of the things to know about the new garage is that there will be some reserved parking permit. There will be a reserved parking permit option. We have carpool permits that will be available. They are free. You just have to sign up for them and qualify to get one. But they basically give you a reserved spot in the garage up until 8:30 a.m. Any spots that are reserved for permit holders that are still open at 8:30 a.m. become available to anyone on a first-come, first-served basis. We also, at Sound Transit, just recently approved a new program that allows us to issue reserved parking permits for single occupancy vehicles, the SOV permits. And it's similar to the carpool permit. A permit holder has a reserved spot till 8:30. If there are any restricted stalls that are available after 8:30, they're first come, first serve. We're still trying to figure out if we can get that SOV permit program ramped up in time for opening of the garage, and so we'll be hammering out those details in the next week or two. But I expect by the end of this month we'll be able to announce both the opening date and the details about the permit parking options that will be available. And I just wanted to note that there will be, the number of permit kind of reserve stalls in the garage is driven by how many permits we actually issue. So if like 50 people sign up to get permits, then there'll be 50 stalls that are kind of in that program. And there will be a cap, so it won't be the whole garage. There'll always be some stalls that are first come, first serve. So more to come on that, details coming, but I did want to let folks know that that's going to be part of the new garage. And then I wanted to also mention, as you probably know, we're well into construction, and we have a team of dedicated community outreach staff who kind of help to make us the best neighbors we can be during construction, because we know it can be pretty disruptive to a neighborhood. And I wanted to introduce one of our community outreach specialists who's in the back, Rhonda Dixon, waving. So one of the many things that our outreach staff do is send email project updates and regular construction alerts. So if you're not getting those alerts and you want to get them, please see Rhonda or just go to the sign up sheet in the back. There's a place you can sign up to get our email alerts. And I got my warning, so I'm done. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Inga. I'm the president of the Ravenna Bryant Community Association. I see some of our board members here in the audience, so I'm happy to see some people here that are familiar to me. So within the last 5 years, RBCA has conducted 2 community surveys because we really wanted to focus our work on what was concerning to our community, to our neighborhood. And one of them had to do with how people interact with Northeast 65th Street, which is one of the main ways people from our neighborhood will get to the light rail station at Roosevelt. And the other is just general. We asked what people's general concerns were about getting around the neighborhood, around mobility. And so in 2013 is when we had the survey about 65th Street. And we asked, do you plan on using light rail when it opens up? And 74% of Ravenna Bryant neighbors said yes, they plan on using the Roosevelt light rail station when it opens up. We asked, well, when it does, how are you going to get there? And most people said they were going to walk. 36% said they were going to walk. 25% said they were going to bus, and 20% were going to bike. So knowing those things, we also wondered, well, do people feel safe doing those walking and biking and taking the bus to the transit station? So when we did our mobility survey, we called our mobility safety survey in 2016, we asked people what their concerns were. And by far, the #1 concern among people in our neighborhood were speeding cars on residential and arterial streets. And I say that even other people who were reported that they were driving cars, they complained about other people in cars speeding on arterial and residential streets. And same thing with crossing the road. People felt it was very difficult to cross the road. And the #1 road that people had concerns about was Northeast 65th Street. So knowing that, and also knowing that there had been multiple people who were struck by motor vehicles on Northeast 65th Street, many who had to go to the hospital, a couple who died. A couple years ago, along with the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association and Northeast Seattle Greenways, we formed the Fix 65th Coalition to advocate for safety improvements on 65th. And I'm happy to say that those improvements are now starting to be implemented on 65th, which makes us happy. So that was one of our big pushes over the past few years to make it a more pleasant experience and more safe experience for people to get from the Ravenna Bryant neighborhood to the light rail station when it opens up. In our most recent board meeting, we started talking about getting to the light rail station that's already open down at Husky Stadium, because half of our neighbors, including my family, will probably continue to go down to the light rail station at Husky Stadium, and that's not the best pedestrian or bike environment getting from the Ravenna Bryant neighborhood down there. And on top of that, we have been recently learning that there are going to be just under 1,000 new apartment units going in on 25th on 25th Avenue, across the street from University Village, within the next few years. Pretty much, if you know where the Travelodge is and the Chase Bank is and Office Depot, all of those, that whole area, there are going to be apartment buildings and condos put in there. So that we have serious concerns about. So we already know Montlake's a mess. We already know 25th is a mess. What can we do within the next few years to make that a better pedestrian environment for the other part of our community? And some people often ask me, so how do you know about all this stuff that's going on in the neighborhood? And first of all, come to Ravenna Bryant Community Association meetings. We always have guest speakers come and talk. We had some developers there the other night who were talking about what they're doing on 25th. And I'd be happy to share more tips later on, but I got my red card, so I'm going to stop there.
Hi, my name is Scott Cooper. I'm the president of the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association. I moved to Roosevelt about 9 years ago when light rail was coming soon, as Miranda says. And that was the biggest impetus for my family to move here, is that it was going to be a center of our community and an easy way to get around. And so it's been a center for us and obviously for the whole Roosevelt neighborhood, planning for it. And so I got suckered into joining the RNA Transportation Committee and started working on pedestrian and bike safety issues. And then a couple years ago, got suckered into being a president of the RNA. And a few things we've been working on recently. The TOD site on top of the Roosevelt Light Rail Station has been a real big focus for us. We've got a very active land use committee. No surprise, with so many changes going on here, people are very engaged and interested to hear about what's going on with all the new developments. And I can't say enough for our land use committee. They've done a great job. We managed to get a grant from the Enterprise Foundation to do community outreach about that site, and to have community input really help impact and change how that development's going to be put together. And so we worked with Sound Transit, Bellwether Housing, Mercy Housing, and really advocated for affordable housing there. Managed to get to be 100% affordable housing, a lot of 2- and 3-bedroom units, which we're really excited about, and some nice pedestrian connectivity, green streets components added to it. So that's been a real big success for us, and it's an ongoing focus for us. Our head of the land use committee, Jay Lazarowitz, I don't know if he's here today. He does an amazing job of keeping up to date on what's being built in the neighborhood, and is very proactive in getting in touch with all the developers, bringing them to the table, having conversations with them directly, and really working in partnership as opposed to in opposition from the developers to help try and make sure everyone's benefiting from the developments going on here. We've worked a lot on pedestrian connectivity, walkability, and connected streets. As Inga mentioned, safety is a huge issue that we focus on. We've done some advocacy on the Roosevelt protected bike lanes, worked with Inga and the RBCA on 65th. We have another project coming up on 70th, the overpass there. It's a bike and pedestrian safe streets initiative, which we're really excited about. And then what we're focusing on in the near term here is trying to reconnect with our local businesses. Thanks to Nabil for hosting. We've had a couple of meetings here, which has been fantastic. And then trying to engage with the new people, the newcomers to Roosevelt. The demographics have changed immensely over the last few years. Way more renters, a lot fewer single-family homeowners. And as you all probably know, the majority of our community councils, they tend to be single-family homeowners for the most part. And it's a lot harder for us to reach out and get renters engaged and people who are new to the neighborhood. So any of you who are single-family homeowners or renters, anyone who's interested, we've got sign-up sheets in the back if you want to sign up for our email letter to keep engaged and hear what we're working on. And any ideas that you have for how to reach out to the newcomers to the neighborhood to get them engaged, we would love to hear about that. We have more good ideas than we have time to implement those good ideas. So the more engaged people we can get, the better. For how we're working on engaging people, we've had a lot of success in the past on kind of these single issue panels like this around the transit-oriented development. We had a series of land use academies in the past, which were a real big success. So that was focusing on the history of the RNA in our land use development or land use education and efforts here in the past, and then focus on the TOD site. And I think we still have one upcoming at some point on the Roosevelt Reservoir. We'll see when that happens. So yeah, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you and get as many people engaged as possible. So thank you.
Great. Good evening. I'm Mark Crawford. First thing I want to do is shout out the dolmas and the hummus. Wow. Seriously. It was wonderful. I'll be back, as they say. And also, just for the people in the back, there are some chairs open in the front here if anybody wants a comfortable place to sit. I'm the executive director at the U District Partnership, and very briefly, our mission is to serve all who work, live in, and visit the U District by fostering, and sustaining a vibrant, diverse, and healthy neighborhood. That's a lot of words. Generally speaking, we do this in 3 ways. We provide direct services to our University District neighborhood. We try to do community building by serving as a nexus and a convener or a supporter of those folks who are trying to convene the community. And then finally, we serve as an advocate. We serve as an advocate for the individual business, store owner, property owner, resident who may be faced by a major issue relative to a redevelopment project and doesn't know where to turn for help. And so we'll try to help them, guide them, and things like that. And in addition, where our boards agree on a particular position, we may take an advocacy position, like saying, we want to make sure that we ensure beat officers on patrol in the district. That's important to safety for all. So those are, at the high level, the 3 ways in which we try to accomplish our mission. The other thing I wanted to do before I go any further is to acknowledge that really from where I sit in the UDP, there's a sort of constant tension between the dualism of fear and excitement. People are very afraid of change. We all know this. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what it's going to mean to them in their life. And others, and some of the same ones, are extremely excited about the opportunities afforded by the changes that are coming. And I think it's good to acknowledge that both those folks have very legitimate and important positions and places at our table, and that we have to answer and speak to all of them. Right now, we're here mostly because we're talking about the transit impacts, but we look at the idea that there are a few major impacts which sort of, as like a jigsaw puzzle, fit together in this. There's the transit station and all of the other transit and mobility related issues associated with them, and these experts have talked a bit about those. There's also the rezone, and you've heard about that, and that's having tremendous impacts on the U District that are also associated with the opportunities that are created by the transit station. There is the University of Washington's master plan change both on campus and off campus, and that's going to have a major impact on the U District and the surrounding areas. Tertiary but immediate are then we're seeing right now the explosion of the residential growth that you've heard from others. Really quickly, I just did a quick count. Right in the like in the half-mile radius around the transit station, there are going to be 944 more total units of apartment and housing development taking place, and 665 of those units are in 3 projects. Okay. So yeah, you all go ahead. So you see what the effect of the rezone and the transit and all those take place just in that one sort of, if you will, illustration about impact. The other thing I want to point out here is that we have to recognize that the U District is actually what I call it's a part of town with many zones. We always think about the U District as being this sort of singular thing, the Ave. It's actually an extraordinarily complex place. The Ave alone probably has 3 very specific and unique zones within the Ave, each having their own needs, each serving their own different populations. And then outside the Ave, you have probably 3 or 4 major sectors, within the U District area, some of them heavy residential, some of them more heavy in the business areas, some of them being mixed use and commercial. So when we have these conversations, we need to know that we have to reach out and have conversations thinking about all of those complexities, not thinking that there's one group of people that's trying to be represented or one predominant issue or need that needs to be resolved. So I just share that with you. As these folks are going along, I'm calling out many of the things I was going to say because they've already been saying them. So in addition to what's being saying, I would say this about the transit station. It represents a change in the geographic relocation of the neighborhood to all the other neighborhoods. And we have to think about it that way. We have to understand what the impact of this is to our businesses, our residents, and our guests. And we have to think about both economic and transportation models that address all 3 complexities. I'm getting my red card, so the last thing I'm going to say here is I'm going to skip through a whole bunch of other things, and I can answer questions later about the actions we did. But we need to be aware of the challenges that are being proposed. This is complex planning with a lot of stakeholders, a lot of agencies, and finding places where we can provide connection and nexus for those conversations with the stakeholders in community is a pretty critical responsibility of ours. I want to acknowledge and shout out the mobility group. We helped fund it, but they've done tremendous work in trying to gather the neighborhood around and say, what is it that we need in our neighborhood with a tsunami of changes taking place relative to transit? They're releasing their report. I don't know if they've actually released it yet or just just about to, but it has been released now. So that's something to look into. We have to know that changing demographics are coming, and we have to be aware of the fact that that changing demographic is cultural, it's ethnic, it's socioeconomic, and the old formulas just don't work anymore. We have to be aware the rental costs are going to skyrocket, both on businesses and on residents, and what does that mean to us? And then the last one, and then I will stop, is we have to realize that these changes are going to create a dislocation of services that support all of our community. Whether they're the churches that are providing daycare or they're providing shelters or whatever they might be, we're going to see changes taking place in the affordability of those services, and those will have incredible impacts on our neighborhoods.
Good evening. My name is Sutphin. I work for Seattle Department of Transportation. I wanted to highlight just a few things that our department, your local Seattle Department of Transportation, SDOT, is doing to help our neighborhoods, your neighborhoods, University District, Roosevelt, and Northgate get ready for the opening of these light rail stations in 2021, which will change our neighborhoods. First, programmatically, we're doing things like this University District Let's Go project. That was a pilot program. We got a small regional grant, as many urban centers around the region received, and we decided to focus it on in the University District to do some programming on transportation options and outreach and education to get the community ready to leverage the assets that the opening of light rail will bring to that community. We contracted with Transportation Choices Coalition, and we hired a marvelous person, Miriam Castro. Miriam, raise your hand again. You're mentioned. Miriam is a magnificent coalition and community builder and outreach person in the neighborhood, and she's done great programming this past year, from events and programming connecting visitors, employers, workers to transportation options. She's done special events for Orca Lift enrollment, which where qualified people are able to get access to transit at a lower cost. She's worked closely with the U District Partnership, and I want to thank Mark Crawford. They've actually hosted a space for her and worked with people in the Ave and elsewhere to help serve them and help them understand what's coming and get ready and know about transportation options that are available for them now. I think we've really seen in this past year doing this pilot that sort of in the University District, what we have sort of a backdoor station at Husky Stadium, and the possibility that provides to the university as a whole. Miriam did a creative thing when the Special Olympics came. She had people out on bikes and did mobile wayfinding and had a really simple map that you would think is pretty straightforward, but oriented people that were down, visitors visiting Husky Stadium, about there's a major business district right up the street. Go up there and just take a bus ride right over across the street, and you're up there in 5 minutes. And they talked to 1,600 people in just a couple days. And she's done a lot of other creative things, including having an event like this. So I think seeing doing that and sort of seeing that back door and thinking about the front door is going to open in 2 years, and it's going to open here and up in Northgate, has really opened our eyes to some exciting opportunities. Also tonight, going to hear from Bill, who's next for Metro, and others, and Ellen about all that. We're working closely with the transit agencies to get ready for the opening of these light rail stations so that we really can connect our communities to light rail stations through transit, walking, biking, and other means. We have at SDOT a couple major projects that I'll highlight that are underway that are going to improve connections. There's the Vision Zero Safety Project, thanks to Inga and others in their leadership on that is improving mobility and safety along 65th Street, which is right along where our light rail station will open here. We have a 15th Avenue project. It's a repaving project of 1.3 miles along 15th Avenue along University of Washington. That's a major transit connection corridor too. So as we're doing a repaving project, we're all doing enhancements that improve access for transit riders, bicycle riders, and pedestrians. The Northgate Bridge, which I bet Jeffrey will talk about, has been designed and is expected to be completed by 2020, a major project connecting the Northgate Light Rail Station to communities on the west side. Next, we have a project in the 43rd Street in the University District where the light rail station is fully designed, which will improve local connections to that light rail station in the University District. we're planning a next phase of improvements along the Route 44 or along the 45th corridor, which in the University District, you have the light rail station right there, but I'm referring to the front door. That's a really important transit corridor that goes all the way over to Ballard. Burgeoning Ballard is what I call it. We're also going to be working, one of my colleagues is here tonight from our parking group, planning for managing parking and looking at new parking management to address and working with Sound Transit and proactively addressing hide and ride prevention around the light rail stations when the extension opens. So that's a lot that we're doing, and the possibilities are very exciting. I want to go back and hit on something Amy talked about earlier. So that's work that's sort of getting ready for the next 2 years, but I want to go back to that term period of maximum constraint. We have a lot of change going on right now. If you look at a broader Seattle citizen, downtown we have a lot of construction. On January 11th, January 11th, the viaduct will permanently close, and then there will be 3 weeks before the new tunnel opens. So there will be a full closure then. And then, so there's that. That's a big change. And I have some materials in the back on what we're doing for this, what the viaduct plan is, and some options about planning how you're going to change and how we should all think about changing our plans during that time. After that, there's still, as we all know, there's a lot of regional projects being completed. There's a lot of transit projects. There's a lot of construction in Seattle, and a lot of change in the next 5 years before the next sort of phases of light rail and things come online in the center city that are going to make it a very constrained environment. That's what we're calling the period of maximum constraint. And there's a flyer in the back that's from our department that explains we're calling the 5 pillars of what we're doing to address that period of maximum constraint. And there's resources where you can go online and think about how you might plan, how you change things you might do during that time of constraint. So it's an exciting time. Also, I have a map in the back that highlights and gives you connections to the projects that I mentioned that we have going underway in these neighborhoods today. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ann. Good evening. I'm Bill Bryant. I'm Managing Director of Service Development at King County Metro, which includes route planning, bus stop planning, link integration planning, rapid ride, and some other programs. And you've heard a lot about partnerships here tonight. I think I'd really briefly like to thank Transportation Choices Coalition, Urban Lux, and the city and others who have put their time into this, and most of all into the other community members who are spending their evenings with us here tonight, whether on the panel or out in the audience. Metro, Sound Transit, and SDOT in particular have a long history of partnering to try to connect transit. Starting in 2009, when the Central Link light rail line opened up from downtown to SeaTac Airport, Metro, starting actually way before that, Metro, SDOT, and Sound Transit started working together in earnest to figure out how to most effectively utilize this massive regional investment in light rail. And we've made a few mistakes along the way. We haven't made any huge ones, but we've certainly learned from our experiences. Most recently, people in this neighborhood are probably almost everybody here is at least somewhat familiar with the March 2016 opening of the Husky Stadium station that we've heard a little bit about this evening. That I want to talk a little bit about the partnerships that surrounded that, and there's some partnerships that are still ongoing to help refine that. And I think it was Amy Gore who mentioned the Montlake Triangle, essentially bus interchange between the light rail station and the bus system and the rest of the transportation system. So it wasn't, the opening of that station was not just about the extension of the light rail line to Capitol Hill and to Husky Stadium. It was also about what happens when you, as a transit rider, emerge from that station and you want to get somewhere that you can't walk to. The 45th and 65th Street stations are going to be huge game changers, but I'll get back to that in a minute. But it was a big challenge down in that corner of Northeast Seattle. And the main pieces that we put together that It took several months, but I consider it to be a success, and I think that the bus ridership and the light rail ridership numbers really bear this out. Included building new bus stops that were nice bus stops, that had electronic signage, that had new sidewalks, new shelters, were as well located as we could possibly do, given the constraints and given the different property ownerships in that area. But we know that that's not good enough, and we in the city, all the partners, are continuing to work together to make that even better as part of this larger set of projects to address the period of maximum constraint. And so you're going to see new bus stops that are closer to the light rail entrances. You're going to see more bus service coming to the light rail entrances. And one thing that you've already seen and that you're going to see ramping up is really a huge product of Metro and SDOT's collaboration, which is the frequency of these bus lines. 3 years ago, before light rail started up, very few, if any, of those lines ran more often than every 30 minutes after about 8 p.m. There were very few exceptions. Route 44 was one of those exceptions, and what's now the 45 was another exception. And then during the day, the routes ran from every 15 to 30 minutes. Well, now, due to a combination of dollars from Metro and the city, which has made a giant investment in transportation operations, transit operations, many of those routes are running every 10 minutes during the midday and on Saturdays, every 15 till late at night, and every 6 or 8 during rush hour. And that just makes a huge difference. I mean, I came up here this evening from the International District, and I knew that I didn't need to bother looking at a light rail schedule. I didn't need to bother looking at the bus schedule ahead of time, because I admit I know the system better than most, but I think that people learn very quickly that that bus is probably going to be there in 5 minutes or less. Not always, and it's not always great, and there's room for improvement. But if that bus is running in every 7 or 8 minutes, that's an average 3 or 4 minute wait. And that's just a big improvement, and it wouldn't have happened without strong partnerships. We have, so now we're looking forward to what are we going to do at the Roosevelt station and at the U District station and at Northgate. So with the new extension, Northgate is going to be kind of the center of attention from Metro's perspective, because we've already done a lot around the Husky Stadium station. We will be proposing some changes to feed into both 45th Street and 65th Street, and on a big scale to Northgate. And I want to describe for you briefly what that public outreach process is going to look like. It would have been great if we could have decided what the bus network was going to look like last year. If last year we could have figured out what it would look like in September of 21, but you just can't do it that far ahead of time. Even if you can come up with what seems like the right answer, things change. So we will actually be out in this neighborhood, in all of the neighborhoods from the U District to Northgate, Maple Leaf, Ravenna, Roosevelt, all throughout the area, seeking input in a big way. And Bran Koster from our service planning team, raise your hand, Bran. He's one of our lead staff on many of these projects. So we're starting to prepare for the changes when those stations come online. We're actually assuming, we're ready to make these changes happen at whatever time. If the light rail comes online 6 months early or 6 months late, we'll be ready to make it happen at that time. But we do have to make changes. Basically, we only have 3 windows per year to make our changes, and those of you who are bus riders know that, because that's when schedules come out 2 or 3 times a year. The Sound Transit and Metro conversations will be partially about how to align the startup date. But we're going to have a feedback process that will include a sounding board or community advisory panels. We don't know exactly what it looks like, but it's going to be well known, and we're going to be partnering with each of the groups that's here at the table today to get the word out as best we can. just to give people a chance to participate and not have anybody feel like there was never an opportunity. So we will have, we'll have series of many public meetings like this. I see a red card. And this is coming right up. Within the next 6 months, you will begin to see evidence and invitations of opportunities to participate. I wanted to just briefly mention we also have a project on Northeast 65th right now, working with the city and the neighborhoods to respace the bus stops as part of the Vision Zero project, as part of the overall improvements to 65th Street safety. So that's another thing you can look for that's underway right now. So I'll turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Hi, Jeff Young. I'm the head of security over at North Seattle, and part of my responsibility is the transportation, parking and transportation. And I've been there about 6 months. This was one of the first projects I was involved in. Immediately made some really good connections with the SDOT people and some of the neighborhood associations. And we have, the bridge that's going to come over I'm from Southern California, so I call it the I-5 or the 5. But it's going to land right on our property at the far end of our what we call the north end. And it's kind of complicated because it's going to land there. There's some fairly sensitive wetlands there that we have to preserve, and of course we've got our own activities going on during the day as far as the university or college activities going on. We've got great partnerships. They've been really open to everything we've had to say as far as what our community concerns are. And those tend to go around parking, because we don't want to become the parking lot for the light rail, because we've got our own parking needs. We've got that. Sometimes when you have a lot of people who don't have activities related to the college, you have to worry about what they're up to and make sure that there's no issues with that. But we want to be a good neighbor, make sure as many walkers and bicyclists can use that bridge as possible. Like I said, we got to preserve the wetlands. That's one of the big concerns for us. There's some historical areas in there also. And we have the crime prevention issues, so we're working really closely on the design, making sure there's good lighting, emergency phones, that the landscaping's good, so there's not places for people to camp and start up encampments. And it's been really good as far as the partnerships. They've been very open to what we've been asking, and so the mitigation ideas have been shared. There's been some really good discussions about that. The design is great. I think it's going to be a really nice design that will add to the look of the area. So we're looking to the future when it finally does happen, and the people start using it. Of course, we're going to do some early assessments of how is it impacting our campus. What do we need to do to address that? And I'm sure there'll be a little good, a little bad, and we'll just have to kind of work with that. Many people don't know this, but at North Seattle, we are actually planning a housing project for students. We're going to have about a 300-bed resident hall. Dorm is a 4-letter word in the university setting. So it's going to be a nice residential halls for roughly 300 students to begin with, at least. Of course, we're hoping, are not going to be driving cars and that sort of thing. They're going to be able to just jump over the bridge and jump on the rail and head on down to the greater Seattle area and really enjoy it. We think it's going to be a big draw for that for us. We're looking forward to being very supportive of that. So that's about 2 years, so I guess that's considered soon in transportation speak. It's about 2 years, roughly. They're starting now with an RFP for the design of it, so we're really looking forward to that. So we're just glad to be a part of it. We want to make sure our concerns are heard, and which they are being heard, and we just want to be a good neighbor to the people in the area. I think it's going to be a great addition for us, and I don't have some of the trepidations that some folks that have been around maybe a little longer do. So I'm looking forward to it, and I want to thank you for including me in this discussion.
Good evening. I'm Joe Gruber with the University District Food Bank. The food bank has been a community resource here in the University District for more than 35 years. For most of that, it was spent in the basement of University Christian Church at 50th and 15th, one of those properties that will soon go by the wayside as development comes through the U District. Fortunately, as an organization, we were able to kind of respond early enough and find a new home for ourselves just blocks down the street adjacent to the library across from Scarecrow Video, Planned Parenthood. But while we are place named the University District Food Bank, we are really a resource for folks from across Northeast Seattle. On an average year, we might serve 50% of our customers from the 98105 zip code, but really we are supporting individuals and families from across kind of the neighborhoods of the Northeast area. So from Capitol Hill up past Lake City, from Fremont, Phinney Ridge, Greenwood, all the way to Lake Washington. So it's a large geographic swath that we work with. And I think we benefit because of having the U in our backyard really allows or has allowed transit to develop over the years to make the food bank accessible to a lot of different neighborhoods and communities. And so as we think forward with the arrival of light rail really into the U District here in a few years, and some of the neighborhoods that will be opened up as a result of its extension north, we are excited about those opportunities for community members, because really when we reflect on how folks access the food bank, 75% of our customers walk, bike, or bus to our services. And so that's a tremendous number of individuals each week who are coming into the neighborhood from outside of the 98105 zip code who will have a new means by which they can access us. But really, that's still a tremendous number of individuals that will rely on alternative modes of transport. And so we still have to be kind of recognize that because all the changes in our neighborhood are going to have a tremendous impact on the thousands of folks that we work with each week. Logistics are a huge part of the work that we do. I don't think it was something that I appreciated nearly enough when I was hired in back in 2003. But logistics really are the lifeblood on how we operate. 70% of the food that we donate or that we receive each week and distribute is donated product. So that's 30,000 pounds of food each week that we're responsible for bringing on-site, processing, and then redistributing out to the community. Whether it's to the 1,300 individual families that walk in the food bank each week, whether it's to the 160 households that we support through a home delivery program, or whether it's through the 600 to 650 kids every weekend that we work with at 14 different Northeast Seattle schools for providing them weekend meals to kind of get through when school meals aren't available. But it's a tremendous amount of moving of food, right? We've got some great partners in Food Lifeline and Northwest Harvest who help food recovery to a certain degree. Got large deliveries coming in from them, but most of the food that we're collecting and redistributing is really coming from community businesses, 15 grocery stores here in Northeast Seattle. So that means each and every day we're concerned about kind of the movement of food and the movement of volunteers to kind of help support that as well. So as we think forward, really opportunities to reduce the number of car trips within the community have a tremendous impact on us, because if we can bring food in much more effectively and efficiently, it saves us money, it saves us some important staff time, it makes volunteer time work that much better. And as an organization that relies on more than 100 weekly volunteers, those small changes do mean a lot. And I think about our simple movement from the old space in the basement where everything was hand unloaded to our new home where we can actually imagine moving food on pallets and storing them in a much more professional way. Those are all huge deals for us as we think about sort of the impact on saving money, making food more readily available to our community members. And then as we engage in conversation with folks, though, there is still fear and trepidation as they think about the future. They remember how their bus routes changed when light rail came to the stadium, and worry about how access may look differently. For an individual who's carrying home 30 or 40 pounds of groceries with a food bank visit, a movement of just a few blocks means a lot. We have a home delivery program because access is a real challenge, especially for an aging population. And so as we think about displacing a bus stop just a few blocks, it really makes a trip to the food bank become nearly impossible. When we think about sort of how even just parking changed for our customers when we moved from one neighborhood to the other, we know that we lost many in that transition. And I will say as we close, we think about even with the work that the community has done to elevate access for low-income individuals and families to the ORCA program. I think there is still a lot of folks who are learning that they're even eligible for that. We've got a social worker on site who does work with us each week, has worked with Miriam on a lot of outreach events, and even as transportation being the most requested service for her to help folks navigate, a lot of it comes down to just making sure that they know that they're eligible for services that they didn't really know existed. And so that for us, as we continue to move forward, is how do we be that nexus? How do we be that communicator for some of the important changes that are happening in our neighborhood?
And Laura, before you start, I would just like to remind everybody that we have these handy note cards on your chair. I see someone's already filled them out like a good girl, all right. So, as Laura's our last speaker, that means you have 5 minutes to write down your questions, and then we'll do the Q&A in that format.
So I'm Laura, I live in the U District. I've lived here for about 9 years. I'm a renter, also facing displacement as things change. I do feel like I want to acknowledge some privileges I have. I have education, class, and skin color privilege. I was born in Columbia, but in Seattle, I'm seen as white, and the work that I'm doing with Share the Cities is working towards an anti-racist organizing framework with other people that see themselves operating under that framework. I started out on the other side of this, where all of you are sitting. I sent my check to the wrong neighborhood association. So I sent it to the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association instead of the Roosevelt Neighbors Alliance, not knowing the difference. Ended up on a mailing list. Katie from the RNA North, as I like to call it, I'm the only one that, it hasn't stuck, but the RNA North kept me on her mailing list, and a few months later, like I said, I have a lot of privilege. I was only working 30 hours a week as a tutor with kids and had some extra time, and I saw that they needed an editor for their newsletter. So I decided to be the editor of the newsletter in the wrong neighborhood, literally blocks away, and ended up their representative to the Northeast District Council. So one thing led to another, sending the wrong check. The other thing I want to say is I started off trying to learn about Seattle politics after having lived in New York, LA, and Chicago, and went to an event like this at the Deca Hotel that the U District had about 6 years ago, and felt like the people sitting on the panel were really far away. And what I've learned in the last 5 years is they're not far away. You can talk to them before meetings, after meetings, you can send emails to them. You can send them emails every week for 6 months till they finally agree to have a meeting with you. I do that all the time. Be persistent and be relentless, and go with a group of people. The more people that show up to someone's office, the more they're going to sit up straight and pay attention to you. Go with people that aren't like you. Go with people that have different stories to tell. Go with people that maybe lived here for 30 years, people that have just arrived yesterday. Go with people that maybe need translation services. Go with people that the people that are sitting up here often don't see in their offices. And let them tell their story, and use your privilege to let other people have that space. These are my goals. These aren't things I've necessarily achieved, but this is what I'm working towards with Share the Cities, which is the group I'm organizing with now. So today I'm supposed to speak about how best to communicate with electeds, how and where to show up on and offline to give feedback to the city and other agencies, how to access free trainings from the city, how to talk to press and media, utilize media for your group's work. So if you're in a group, or even if it's just the people on your block or the people in your building, and you want to do a tenants' rights workshop in your building, how would you do that? Would the city give you free training for that? Would they give you free materials? There's also a lot of funding opportunities for community groups, matching funds, ways to partner with nonprofits, and then social media tips and tricks. So I went from sitting there to being up here based on tweeting. So just through Twitter, I have people donating me monthly, and I'm speaking at a panel at Railvolution, and I'm doing all this stuff just from educating people. I was a middle school math and science teacher. So my tweeting has always been about educating people about weird, wonky housing and land use words like TOD, AMI, SOV, the definition of affordable housing. A lot of people here say affordable housing like we all have a common shared understanding of what that means, but there's a very specific definition that people up here mean when they say affordable housing. Green streets, Vision Zero, protected bike lanes. These things get thrown around in meetings, and they're not things that make sense at first. So what I want to tell all of you is you can go from being there to being up here. I'm a resource. You can contact me on Twitter, direct message at Share the Cities. There's a newsletter that I'm going to send out monthly in the back. You can look at. And the work that I'm doing with my group is up near the 2 light rail stations in District 5, Council District 5, the 145th station and the 130th station, and walking around and talking to people around the Jackson Park Golf Course and asking them how the mobility survey stuff. How are you going to get to the station? What do you want to see when you come home from work, when you come up from the station? What other types of things do you drive to right now that you wish you could walk to or take a bus to? Just to really get to know the community that we're working in, and not repeating some of the mistakes that planners have done, which is tell communities we know best. So I have an idea of what I want in that community, and everyone that organizes with me, we're not going to pretend that we don't have some like 50-year magical vision of what we would want to see, which is why we're volunteering our time to do the work. But we're not trying to impose those really whimsical, fun visions of the future that motivate us to do the work onto other people. We really want to find out what everyone there wants. So community organizing is super exciting, it's super energizing. We're living in really sad, frustrating, hard times, and it's really energizing to work with your neighbors to make a better future.
Thank you. All right, hands to the panel. So thank you guys for condensing a ton of information into a very tiny time slot. How are you guys feeling? Informed? Yeah? Empowered? Yeah? A little excited? Yeah? Okay. So our volunteers here are going to collect the questions that you have on the cards, and while we go through them, though, I'm going to throw out a question to the panel. I'm going to give you 2 options. If you think you can do them both in under a minute, go for it. Otherwise, choose. So from an agency perspective, what does meaningful input, what is the best opportunity for the folks here who want to get involved? Is there a decision point or a point of contact, or if they want to stay informed, what's the best way for them to continue to know what's going on in your organization? And or from a personal perspective, what are you most excited about now that we're finally getting an actual network of high capacity transit that will not just be north-south, it will start to branch out. So what are you most personally excited about for the coming service increase?
Am I starting? Okay. I'll start with the thing I'm most excited about. When I do this kind of work, I think a lot about one of the days that it was like one of those disaster days of transportation in the city. I think it was like maybe the fish truck overturned, and then like it started to snow, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how is this even possible? And I walk sometimes, I take the bus sometimes, and I can also take light rail. And that day, granted, the light rail was very, very crowded, but I could get on a train and get home. And I remember thinking, I want way more people to have these options. And it's not fair that only so few of us can do that. And so I was hearing from all my friends, and it's like, oh, I've been out in the snow for 3 hours, and I just desperately want that for more people. And that's why I'm really excited about it. I think from a city council perspective, in terms of staying up to date with what's happening, probably there are a few kind of writers who track what's happening at City Council, including the Seattle Council Insights. The Seattle Channel, who is here right now, is a fantastic resource for watching the meetings. You can sign up for emails for all of the agendas for all of the committees to see what's going on. And I'm happy to talk about it afterwards too if you have any other questions about how to keep track of what council's doing.
So quickly on the personal side, I live in Lake City near 145th, so I'm personally terribly excited about BRT on 145th and the light rail station at 145th, because that will be my route I'm really excited to see the changes come to the street, actually the 145th Street. That will be very exciting. In terms of engaging, I feel like I used to be a community outreach specialist, and I know it can be very confusing for anyone who doesn't live light rail station design and planning every day to understand when to engage, because it's such a long, multi-year process to go through the environmental review where we kind of get to the alignment, and pre-design where we're sort of, rough configurations of the stations, getting down to the details. So a couple of things come to mind. One is just sign up for our email alerts, because at a bare minimum, you'll know when there's public meetings, you'll know when there's design input requested, blah, blah, blah. That's great. Also know that we are happy to meet with you. Anyone who's interested and emails community outreach and says, I have a question or I want to talk to someone, you will get a response. We meet with people all the time. We meet with condo associations who are next to our stations. We meet with apartment buildings. But I would also say, because like with light rail planning, it is so jigsawed in with land use planning and all those other agency efforts. I think one of the best ways is to get involved with your neighborhood association, like the RBCA and the RNA, because we come to those meetings, and that's where we can kind of have those intersectional talks with other agency representatives and get the neighborhood's input.
All right, so what I'm really excited about, I have to say, in the RBCA, we have some people who feel one way about certain topics and other people who feel other ways about certain topics. But I think what really brings us all together is we all think that pedestrian safety is worth working on together. That's one of the few things that everyone pretty much on our board agrees on. And so we can do a lot of advocacy work around that. So that's what makes me excited when we're all on the same page, we're all moving forward. Everything that they said about community engagement, about engaging, absolutely. I encourage all of you to, they may seem like really dense documents, but if you haven't read some master plans, they all have timelines, they all have implementation plans. You want to know it gets a little time consuming sometimes, but if you're really interested in a certain thing, SDOT, for example, has all sorts of master plans. There's a bike master plan, a pedestrian master plan, a transit master plan. These are plans. Governments have plans. Go and read them or talk to somebody who has.
For getting engaged, come and talk to me. Shoot me an email. We'd love to have you. I've been surprised that in taking on this role, at how much sway the neighborhood associations have around the city. And I've been riding the coattails of all the people who preceded me who've done a lot of really great work in kind of building the good name of the RNA, which has been fantastic. It's easier than you think to come and join these organizations and have conversations with the agencies and elected members and have some meaningful input and shape how things are done around here. That's been the biggest takeaway for me. For what we're excited about, it's the light rail station. I'm excited to see how this is going to change the community. I'm excited for all the new people coming to the neighborhood and see how it adds to the vibrancy and new opportunities for businesses and engagement. So I'm embracing the change. I'm looking forward to it.
And to speed things up just a little bit, because I do have several questions we'd like to get to. Pick one, or go with what you're personally excited about, and then what you're really excited about personally is your agency thing, then you can say that.
udistrictpartnership.org. You can sign up for either weekly or monthly newsletters and the alerts we send out.
Handout in the back has some links to projects. A lot of the projects have very detailed information and a communications person, an email, public meetings. Other observation about Seattle, I've been a planner in Seattle and in the region for a long time, is our community is really informed. Learn from your neighbors. They know a lot and can help educate you and connect you to things.
Very good. So for input, I would say for Metro, it depends on, we're going to have a lot of opportunities. It depends largely on your level of interest and your ability to commit time. If you have a lot of both, I strongly encourage you to apply for the Community Advisory Board. We don't know what it's going to be called yet, but we will be looking for members for that early next year. but also going through any of the neighborhood groups or contacting us individually. We don't throw away anything that comes our way in terms of input. We will have many online surveys and things like that for people to use.
I'm excited about all I'm learning about transportation issues. I know security, but I don't know a lot about transportation, just a little bit. But I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about wetland preservations and things like that. So it's been kind of exciting for me. Like I said, I come from Southern California, where it was done all wrong, and it's kind of nice to see a place where it can actually happen. And so I'm excited about that.
If you're interested in getting involved in the food bank, I'd welcome your participation either as more in a traditional role, helping us, sort or hand out food, or using some of the other talents you might possess, whether it's helping with fundraising, helping with social media. Send me an email, joe@udistrictfoodbank.org, and we'll be happy to find an opportunity for you to engage.
The thing that motivates me to do this work is that I'm really excited about housing access, choice, and affordability. And transit access allows people to not have to pay for a car and car insurance and all of that stuff, which frees them up to have better housing options no matter what income level they're at. And having more truly deep affordable housing at transit stations is a win-win for transit and for housing.
Fantastic. Thanks. So now for the audience questions, we've got several. I'm not totally sure we have time, or how many we have time for. So we got 10 minutes? Okay, so I tried to pick the more comprehensive questions. So one question is traffic congestion on all the arterials will certainly get worse. Please describe pedestrian, transit, bike, and traffic improvements that will improve traffic and safety in a minute or less.
A little more housing.
Well, I would say from Metro's perspective, we love transit lanes. So, yes.
Yes. Yeah, and Seattle Transportation, when we look at corridors, we take a multimodal approach with a high priority on safety. Vision Zero was thrown out before. That is an initiative that has a goal of zero fatality. So, and it's very data driven. So we really take a holistic approach when we go into a corridor. I mentioned a paving project. We had to repave the roadway. But we're not just paving it. We're improving access to transit. We're improving safer bicycle facilities, safer crossings for pedestrians.
Anybody else? Multimodal?
Build more housing near transit, and then more people can just be where they are.
Okay, so someone recently learned that a large percentage of people who work in the U District drive to work. What can we do to help support small businesses, offer transit passes to their employees, or other commute reduction options the way that major employers do?
I'll say one thing. I mentioned really quickly commuter transit benefits. There are a lot of places where you can pay for, like, do you know FSA, like the flexible spending account for healthcare, where you pay for it pre-tax? There's also a way to do that for transit passes. And so City Council just passed something requiring, in I think 2 years, all businesses over sorry, what is it? Soon, yes. Businesses over 50 employees and then over 20 employees will need to offer that benefit to their employees. And it saves money for the business and it saves money for the employees in their transit passes. And so one of the things we're working on is working with the Office of Labor Standards and the Commute Seattle organization to help do technical assistance to businesses, to smaller businesses, to help them get that program set up. So that would be one example of how we can help businesses make sure their employees get on transit.
And to add that there are business-focused products. Most of us, or many of us, buy individual Orca passes, but also some people in the room might get it employer provided. So there's a program, a business program that there's support. Commute Seattle, Miriam, while she's here through the end of the year, can help connect people in the U District to that. So there's resources there to assist businesses.
And if I could briefly just speak to the success of those programs, one of the reasons why for the downtown commuter market, Metro and Sound Transit combined carry virtually, it's like 49.5% of all commuters during commute hours to downtown. That's largely because many of those commuters get passes that are provided by their employers. They're not, I was going to say free, they're not free if someone's paying, but to the employee they seem to be free, or they're very easy to get or highly subsidized. So those are very successful programs, and that accounts for a very large share of Metro's fare box revenue as well.
Great. So we're going to talk a little bit about lessons learned. The specific question is for Bill Bryant from the Husky Stadium opening that feel applicable to Northgate. But if anybody else, lessons learned are often the best stories. So anybody else who wants to share a lesson that's important and relevant to U District, Roosevelt, Northgate stations.
I'll just briefly, good news is that the environment around Montlake and Husky Stadium is very difficult, as several people pointed out. It's hard to get there by any kind of transportation mode. The good news is that Northgate has been, beginning with the early design process, has been much more of a blank slate that's going to allow buses to be closer to the transit station entrances, and in fact, in many cases, to be essentially sitting there waiting for passengers to switch from rail to bus. So it will be substantially more transfer friendly from the beginning, I would say, when Northgate opens.
Other lessons?
I would just add on to that I heard some of your staff say it's the only station we'll have when it opens that you can get off the bus and never look up from your phone and just get on the train, because you will not have to cross any streets.
Okay, I think we one more question. So this is, has Metro or Sound Transit considered small shuttle vans from major intersection to to Link Light Rail? And this can also be expanded to, what are some other non-traditional or more innovative potential solutions that may be considered?
We'd like to view it as less about the kind of vehicle that's providing the service between the neighborhood or the employment center or whatever to the high capacity transit system. So when I think about how to do that as effectively as possible, I would like those vehicles, whether they're small or large, to run as often as they can and as reliably as they can. And after that, then we would size the vehicle. So there's no clear benefit to having a vehicle be smaller or larger other than that it's sized to the market.
Great. And then just real quick, since a lot of those questions are more technical and for agency folks, if the neighborhood associations or any service providers or outreach people want to just make one plug for something.
Gondolas.
Gondolas, oh Lord. I love gondolas.
50-year plan.
Okay.
I was just going to say, for lessons learned, getting involved as early as possible is something we've learned is the most effective way to have an effect on the investments happening in our community. People tend to be reactive, and a lot of decisions are made by the time that those plans are rolled out. So even though it feels way off, get involved early.
So I'm glad we've all learned what soon really means. I think that's a good takeaway from tonight. So I think thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the audience. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your interest. We will send today's recording along with other opportunities for continued conversations. Please feel free to stay, network, and grab a beverage. The only caveat is 10 o'clock. You don't got to go home, but you can't stay here. So thank you for coming.